Hello everyone, this is Ronnie, and it's the first video like this I've made in a while. And I suppose I want to promote the UK Fruit Fest a little bit, so there's a link below to get more information about it if you'd like to come along, and you're very welcome to come along, and I'll leave that there for the moment. Uh, in this video, I'll talk about where I differ from a lot of people who are teaching or promoting a raw vegan diet in terms of the way I think about it. And I differ from a lot of the people that I interview that are in podcasts and things like that we do, and even sometimes people that speak at the festival and so on. I have some slightly different viewpoints and ideas, and I'm not saying I'm right about those things, and I'm not saying I can give you the evidence, but I'm going to tell you where I sort of differ from a lot of people who are leaders and teachers in the raw vegan community. The first thing is that I um pretty much I don't know if I want to say anti supplements, or just I don't personally use them, or I don't think they're as important as people make out. And by supplements I mean products that are basically um, fractured versions. I don't know if fracture is the right word, but basically supplements. They're nutrients that have been refined down into a pill or powder form, and that people take to try and you know correct or ensure their nutritional balance or whatever. And this is an enormous industry, and it has been an enormous industry for maybe hundreds of years, but certainly at least 100 years or more. And it all stems from a natural human bias of the feeling of lack and not enough when it comes to food. To me, this is where the psychological bias of all that comes from. And to this day, every day, a new supplement business is started, a new supplement line is started, a new protein powder is started, and will make millions and millions of pounds for someone. Every single day, a new one will start and will make millions of pounds for someone. It's a business. And when something is such a thriving, strong business, such a working business model, you've got to question it. You really do have to question it. You have to say to yourself, there's something up here. If there's something that has been for over 100 years a thriving, profitable business model in which enormous sums of advertising have can be thrown at, the enormous amounts of propaganda can be put out there, do you think that there's a chance that that might have influenced how people think over time? And it certainly does. A lot of nutritional information that people have in their head is marketing information. Even stuff like bananas have a lot of potassium and oranges have a lot of vitamin C. It's marketing information, because the truthful thing to say is that all fruits and plants have, potassium and vitamin C, basically. And plenty of foods have potassium, not just fruits and plants, and animal products do as well. So this is marketing information, not really nutritional guidance or advice or education, which is a bit more of a nuanced thing, I suppose. So you've got supplements out there, and the raw food world has sometimes been about selling supplements, and that's been part of it, and then about selling superfoods and all that. But the alternative health industry, a massive part of that is the sale of supplements. And I guess people know they kind of eat unhealthy, and they think that maybe this will balance things out. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe they feel better using it. But in terms of the evidence, there is basically no evidence that people should, as a kind of health practice, take supplements. There's no, if you go to any mainstream website, any mainstream, and by the way, like, do you not think the mainstream is influenced by the pharmaceutical companies that produce supplements? So if it was all like, oh, it's all about conspiracy, the conspiracy should be to take supplements, but the mainstream is saying we don't really need supplements. You know, the health service and all these things. It says you get your nutrition from from your diet, and there's no indication that there's any real need to be taking supplements. Like the food supply is monitored, and people's health is monitored, and if you look at the ways people die and things like that in developed countries, nutritional deficiencies aren't in that list, you know. So the use of supplements is a broad kind of recommendation. Like everyone should use like some kind of multivitamin. There's no evidence that that improves anyone's health, and there is no evidence that there's actually evidence that it might actually be bad for people's health to some degree. Now, that's not the same as someone that legitimately has a deficiency concern or has a problem or a challenge with that and it can be for many different reasons, and it can be nothing to do with your diet. So you might have had a form of an operation. You might have had some kind of surgery. You might have taken some kind of medication, and it's led to you having a deficiency. Well, that's not really to do with your diet, you know. So, but in that situation, you might have to go and take a supplement, and that's something you would deal with a doctor. To me, there's a medical side of this that needs a little bit more professional one-on-one help from someone that is, you know, has access to your medical records, by the way, because, you know, going to a health coach or a raw vegan coach or something like that, I don't think they should be offering you supplement advice because they don't know. You might, I mean, people are quite happy to lie about their health all the time. So you could, quite frankly, lie and say, "Oh yeah, I've never had any health problems, or I've never." And if 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 they had access to your health records, they would go, "Okay, they were in a psychiatric hospital here, and they were, you know," and over and over and over, they would see that your life story was maybe different than what you were prepared to actually say, and and there might be things within that that indicate something. Oh, they had eating disorders for many years and they were in psychiatric hospitals. Or maybe what they're telling me isn't exactly true. You know, I mean, like maybe they're not quite being honest here about what they're eating. So you sort of need some some more professional level advice. I would suggest for that. But I would really suggest people don't jump to the conclusion, oh, I'm feeling tired, I must have B12 deficiency. Like that's a really silly thing to think. If you're tired, maybe you've not had a lot of sleep. Maybe you're stressed. It's simple things usually. It's usually simple things. So I'm not a big promoter of supplements or the idea that we have to supplement, and that includes vitamin D and B12. I'm not I'm not against the idea of supplementing for these things, but I'm not a avid kind of you need to do these things as a vegan, you must do these things. But I could be wrong about that. But I'm just saying, like, um, the more you meet long-term vegans and ask them about B12, so many of them are like, oh yeah, I should really do that. I keep on forgetting to take B12. Like they don't, it's not this big deal. And I've met people who claim to have had B12 deficiencies and stuff like that. I've met that, but it's always like, oh, I was getting really stressed. Yeah, but that doesn't mean you had B12 deficiency. Oh, I had this pain or that pain. Well, it doesn't mean you had B12. You're if you're a vegan, your B12 is going to show up as low. Do you know what I mean? So of course they're going to say, oh, B12 deficiency, but it's not necessarily the same thing. So actually, a bunch of vegans don't come up low for some reason, even ones that don't supplement. I don't really understand exactly why and why not. Anyway, I'm not you must take supplements person. The other thing I'm not, on top of that, is I'm not a you must have a certain amount of greens or nuts or seeds or whatever, or you will not get enough nutrition. I'm not a big believer in that. Um, I'm not a staunch fruitarian. I'm not an ethical fruitarian. I'm not a sort of, um, oh, we must not hurt the plants. I'm not really like, I don't really think like that. But I don't believe, once again, belief is just a theory, my idea, but I don't really believe we need to eat greens and nuts and seeds and things like that to sort of supplement or shore up or add more nutrition to a fruit diet. I don't believe that. I think that there's nothing wrong with eating those things, and there's nothing wrong with variety in general and all those kind of things. But I'm not convinced there's any difference at all. And when I've asked people who have more experience than me in these matters, their evidence is pretty weak. It's like, well, I knew this guy, and he was kind of flaky, and when you talk to him, his concentration would go away, and then he started eating greens, and it came back. It's like you can't base it on that one situation without knowing anything about what that guy was really doing in his life. So I tend to think that you could live on fruit if you wanted to, and you could live on fruit for one fruit for a long period of time, and I don't really think you would have any problems. You could live on one fruit. I don't think we're meant to, because I think, in nature you can't live on one fruit. Basically, you would eat variety naturally through nature. So probably variety is like a good thing, but I'm not sure if it's an essential thing. And if you look at, a chimpanzee diet, they look at the primate diets, and it changes depending on where they live. Like 50% of their diet is figs. 50% of their diet, of all they eat. At least 50%, by the way, because usually these calculations are like based on weight, which is not quite a right weight. It's probably more than that, you know. So they're just eating figs. Like they're not, oh man, I need to make sure I have every single I need to make sure I have dark, like really bitter, dark leafy greens to get my minerals. Like they're not doing that, and they're eating greens, um, but they're kind of a bit more suited for that than humans are. I tend to think humans are more frugivorous, but it might be because I've got a particularly sensitive palate towards the bitter flavors of greens. So it's never made sense to me like that we would have needed to eat leaves when they're not very appealing, you know. So, and also nuts and seeds. Like some people say, well, you need the protein and the fats and the blah blah and whatever. And I don't believe that either. I don't see any huge benefits to adding more nuts and seeds to your diet. The 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 reason that some people might experience benefits with adding more fats is usually something more simple, like they weren't eating enough calories. And the biggest error that people make, especially if you go on 80-10-10 low fat raw vegan diet, is they undereat. And there's a couple of reasons people undereat, but I've realized a new one. And one of them is basically that if people feel really satisfied when they eat just even a little bit of fruit, and they're not used to eating that amount of volume. And yeah, and basically they're used to eating smaller amounts of food. And on a raw food diet, you don't really feel hunger the same way. And fruit and vegetables aren't addictive, so you don't addictively eat them compulsively. So you end up eating less than you usually would. And then something else I'm going to add to this. Oh, yeah. And then chronometer definitely undervalues some of these foods, or would make you think there's more calories in certain fruits. So people are eating. You could even follow chronometer, and unless you're weighing everything and weighing the flesh, like oranges is an example. An orange on chronometer might be 50 to 75 calories. If you actually weigh out the flesh of an orange that you eat, you might only get like, you'd be surprised at how little you might actually get from that. And you wonder, like, how come I've just ate 10 oranges and I feel like I don't, like, I'm still hungry, I'm totally, so people are always under eating when they try and just focus on fruit. Uh, and that's the problem for most people. So those are two things that I don't follow along with. There's a lot of things that I'm more in line with a lot of people with. Like, I don't believe in detoxification. I'm not really a big fan of juicing, but I'm not particularly mind that, but it's not something I would focus on. Detoxification is not a way I would look at things. A lot of the Robert Morse stuff, some of the John Rose stuff, anything that's any ideologies of like that you need to be fasting and detoxifying, you know, you get onto a good diet, your body's going to take care of all that. And I'm not a huge proponent of fasting, especially for people starting off. Uh, and the truth is that most of the great stories that have ever been told about fasting, that are in the fasting books and all that stuff, of the great recoveries, a lot of those people died because they went right back to their diet afterwards. They went to a fast, it changed their life, felt better, they could walk again, their whatever, their hearing came back, or their hair grew back, or whatever happened, whatever magical things happened. And then they went home, went back to the diet they had before, and the diseases and the problems came back and they died. Like, it's it's such a short term thing, and most people, or a lot of people, couldn't maybe afford to just keep going back to a fasting place, or can't do it on their own, can't stick to a fast on their own. So I'm not a huge fan of it, although I think it's, I'd like to. If my grandfather could do a fast, he's not in a very good way. It'd be probably great for him to do a fast and then have a good diet afterwards. But you know, is he going to do that? He's probably not. But I'm just saying that, like, yeah, it'd be good for people to do a fast. They'd probably feel better for a short period of time. But I'm more interested in looking at this as a lifestyle rather than, and trying to convince people that it's a lifestyle rather than that it's a detoxification process, or that kind of thing. So that's another thing I suppose that I differ on. And yeah, generally I don't really believe in the idea that fruit has to be supplemented with all this stuff, that there's not any nutrition in the soil. That I don't really believe in any of that stuff, and I think there's pretty good evidence that that's not real. So anyway, thank you for watching this video, and feel free to comment below if you want me to make a video about something else, and ask a question or whatever. And if you want to come to the festival, I'll put a link down below and you can check that out. Thank you very much.